Hey there, everybody. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of Friday Morning at the Funhouse with Martin Popoff. Good morning, my friend. How are you today?
Morning, Pete. Doing fine. Looking forward to this one. This was a great idea of yours. So this will be fun.
Yeah, hopefully it's a great idea. So today we're going to this crazy topic we picked for this Friday morning is all about front-loaded albums. So these are albums, yeah, in some cases they're pretty notable albums. They're albums that we actually like, but the weight of the album is carried by that first half of songs. So either if you're a vinyl person, side A, if you're a CD person, the first half of the CD, and we think that first half is spectacular, and then it kind of like falls off a cliff a little bit. And I don't know about you, Martin. I'm not saying here that I dislike the second half of any of these albums or CDs, but they don't measure up in there. And we'll go through each one of them and explain why we feel like we feel. So I'm sure there's going to be people out there that love all these songs that are going to be featured on these second sides, but not that we don't like them, but there's a drastic difference. I think that's what kind of set these apart. So I'll have Martin kick us off with his fifth choice of the day.
Okay, so my first one is Nazareth, Hair of the Dog, but the U.S. version of it, not the way it came out in the U.K. There we go. What a great album cover, right? So dark, really cool. So the UK version had Guilty on side one, which was also a cover, but not as big a hit as Love Hurts, which Love Hurts went on side one of the American version. So side one of Hair of the Dog. So this is one that had such a stark contrast with me. Side one is like, you've got Hair of the Dog, which is just such an immediate straight between the eyes, beautifully recorded. This is when Manny Charlton takes over the production again from Roger Glover. And actually he was a really good student. He was a real tech guy, but Roger, and Manny admits as himself, he says, I always kind of watched what Roger was doing, and he really learned from Roger Glover in terms of how to produce these records. So he's in the production chair, and he does an amazing job. This is a great sounding album for 1975. But you got Hair of the Dog, then you got Miss Misery, which is another one of their 2-ton sledges, super famous heavy song. Then you've got Love Hurts, which is their most famous song of all time. And then you've got Change in Times, which is another heavy, efficient, song that everybody loves. It's a big famous song in the set list. But you get over to side two, and I always even thought side two didn't even sound as good as side one in terms of the production. To me, everything about it is murky and dark. You've got the really long Please Don't Judas Me. Beggar's Day is okay, but I was never crazy about it. Yet another cover from them. So for me, this album kind of was, that is the dark side of the album, the dark side of the moon. It's such a contrast with all of side one being complete bangers, and then all of side two being this weird exploratory zone, whiskey drinking woman and all that. So there you go, Hair of the Dog.
Yeah, I mean, there's a big difference. I don't mind the second side, but it's definitely pales in comparison to that first side is pretty killer. And I do want to bring up, because I saw I can't remember what the video was, something in the last 2 weeks. There was a discussion in the comments about Nazareth, and a couple people were like, well, Nazareth were never heavy. I don't know about that. They have some heavy songs. Miss Misery is pretty damn heavy, and there's at least another handful of tracks from the 70s that I think is pretty heavy. So in defense of Nazareth, because I've been a Nazareth fan for a long time. Anyway, I digress here. All right, my number 5 choice here is UFO's No Heavy Petting. Okay, or heavy petting, I should say. I mean, side A, and this is, again, UFO with Schenker. Third album after Phenomenon, No Heavy Petting, Force It.
Phenomenon, Force It.
Natural Thing opens it up. Great song. I'm a Loser. Both of those feature in their live sets. Great songs. Can You Roll Her? Pretty heavy, kind of bluesy. Belladonna, kind of majestic, little kicking heavy there as well. Reasons Love, which I think is the underrated gem on this album. Really, really heavy track. And then you got side B, or, the second half. Highway Lady. On With the Action is great. I think that's, for me, I almost didn't choose this album because I love On With the Action so much. But, Highway Lady, A Fool in Love, and Martian Landscape. I don't want to say pedestrian because I don't think this band knew how to be pedestrian. But when you look at that first side, I mean, you know, it just doesn't compare. And it's almost like if they would have switched that on with the action with maybe, you know, Belladonna or Can You Roll Her, side A is one of the great album sides in rock history right there. But again, it's a very solid album. I like this album a lot. But side B kind of falters a little bit. And again, the whole concept here is about that front loaded thing. And, you know, did bands and record labels do that on purpose? I don't know, because if you want people to kind of get into the whole album, and it's always interesting when you get an album where it just the first 4 or 5 tracks, boom, 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 and then they just kind of the other stuff, right, is relegated to the back of the album. You kind of want to have your attention held throughout the whole album. It doesn't always work that way.
Yeah, one thing they often did, even more so than even like where do you place the hit on the album or the single, if you even planned it ahead of time, because obviously there is a first single that's usually planned ahead of time, but second and third single not so much. But one thing they often did is especially in the heavy metal realm, of course, is make that super fast one, the OTT one, the double bass drum song. Yeah. They often put that as the first song. And then that concept is sort of tied in also with a song that the band kind of is thinking ahead in their mind is going to be a big concert favorite or a concert anthem, right? So they always kind of wanted to do that. It was often a fast song, you know, and it got so cliche with bands like Accept, Saxon, I think, to some extent. You often got that fast song kicking things off. But yeah, that to me, that's my favorite album of that whole Schenker era, and I think it's the best sounding one, right?
It sounds really good. Yeah,
Leo Lyons, I think, produces that one, right?
Yep.
Yeah, good album. Okay, so my number 4 choice of the 5 is Deep Purple Burn. And this one, I've often felt, there we go. I love that cover too, as well. So it kicks off with a fast one, considered probably to be, you know, by many people, I would say the greatest that isn't a Mark II song of all their songs. Everybody loves Burn, you know, heavy and fast, and it's a great Ian Pace showcase. So it just kicks off great. Might Just Take Your Life is short enough and it's heavy enough. And it's a song. We actually played that in our band, believe it or not, in the 80s. And then Lay Down, Stay Down is another kind of like, you know, bright and sprightly pyrotechnic, you know, moving along kind of commercial song. Sail Away is a good song. It's a little more down tempo, but it's also pretty heavy enough with that clavinetti sound going on. So that's your whole side one. It's all essentially action packed and eventful. And then even when you flip to side 2, you get You Fool No One, which is pretty good. You know, it's heavy enough and it's a song and it's singing all that. But then after that, honestly, I can't even tell you what's going on here even sounds like anymore, or A200. And then I hate Mistreated, can't stand it. You know, ruins Deep Purple live albums and ruins Rainbow on Stage. Just hate the song to death. So yeah, this is one of those where it's like action all the way through, even into side 2, and then it's all over. So there you go.
I mean, I like Mistreated, so, but I could totally see your point. You know what it is too? I think that it became such like this long piece in their live sets, and even with Rainbow, that it's like, I think the song, as it's, what is it, 7 minutes? I mean, you know, if you cut Mistreated down to 5 minutes, you think you might like it a little more?
No, because all I can think of is a chain gang on the side of the highway. You know, I just a song that slow just drives me crazy with very little going on in it. So no, I can't stand a slow blues.
That's it. I hear it. I will say What's Going On Here is probably my least favorite song on this album. Although A200 is like whatever. I love You Fool No One. I think that's a great track. But yeah, but definitely side B is not quite up to the heights of side A.
Yeah. All right.
So my number 4, Uriah Heep, High and Mighty. Right. So this is an interesting time in the period of Uriah Heep. So this was the last album with David Byron on vocals, all sorts of issues with lineups and all that. You know, Gary Thane has passed away by this time. You got John Wetton on bass on this album. I think the first half of this album is really good. I mean, really strong. One Way or Another is a terrific track, I think.
Amazing. Yeah.
I mean, what a great leadoff track that is. Weep in Silence, I dig a lot. Misty Eyes has just, it's a really cool kind of atmospheric melodic track with a great chorus. Midnight is pretty rocking. Can't Keep a Good Band Down, kind of like their every album they got like a kind of like a boogie track, whatever. Woman of the World is pretty good. But then, you know, you got Footprints in the Snow, which is okay. Can't Stop Singing, I don't like it all. Make a Little Love, I don't like it all. Confession, it's okay. It's amazing to me how, and again, this is another perfect example of how they just, you know, maybe the band were a little unsure of this album as well, and the label, and they said, well, let's just throw all the best ones up front, because there's really not a lot of really great material here. And you can kind of, as you're going through this album, you can kind of tell a band that's kind of almost falling apart at the seams, right? But I mean, you got 5 really strong tracks on here. The rest is pretty forgettable. And then you got that interesting Hypnosis cover there, right?
Cool. Yeah.
The upside down gun plane, whatever the hell it is, right? Interesting. So I don't know. I kind of dug John Wetton in this band. I thought he added an interesting element. You know, he sings lead on the title One Way or Another, and he's the good background vocals. I mean, I love him as a singer and all that. But yeah, so good front-loaded album. The rest of it, not so much.
Yeah. Yeah, talk about front loaded with One Way or Another too, which is just almost one of my favorite. You know, it's got to be one of my top 10 favorite Heep songs of all time.
Oh, it's a top 10 for me. Yeah. Oh, without doubt. Yeah.
Yeah, wicked. All right. Okay, so my next choice is not this album, because I wanted to show you this because I thought this is just ridiculous. Why do I have 4 vinyl copies of Foghat Stone Blue? Plus,
is this Chris Allo impersonating Martin Popoff here this morning?
They're all the same though. They're not reissues, right? It's all the same, you know. And then I've got a CD of it too. But no, Stone Blue is actually a little front loaded as well. But my choice is this one here, Night Shift. This is really, I kind of screwed up. I should have done this last, because this is the most front end loaded album of anything I've got here, because and there's the back cover. So I obviously have 2 copies of this as well, but there's the back cover. The songs aren't in order on the back cover. The songs are in order on the back cover of this one. But yeah, to me, this record, probably my favorite Foghat album, number 1. 1976, I believe. I often for years thought this was a 77 album, but it's a 76. So Drive and Wheel, Don't Run Me Down, and Burn the Midnight Oil is your side 1. There's only 3 songs on it. They're all pretty long, but it could have been a little longer. We got a 511, 631, 536. Easily 3 of my favorite Foghat songs of all time. Just love them all to death. They're all very different from each other. Drive and Wheel's your awesome party boogie rocker. Don't Run Me Down's really cool. Burn in the Midnight Oil, a little more majestic, atmospheric. But you get over side 2 and you get Night Shift, which is one of their best sort of technical heavy metal rockers. And then after that, I just don't even care. You got Hot Shot Love, Take Me to the River. I hate that song. I don't want to hear the Talking Heads do it. I don't want to hear Foghat do it. So I don't want to hear people doing covers, period. Right. I'll Be Standing By. So really, you know, even though this is my favorite Foghat album, by the time you get to side 2, it's kind of all over for me after Night Shift. But I love the first side and Night Shift so much. Produced by Dan Hartman, does a pretty good job production. It's not an amazing sounding album, but yeah, my favorite, Fool for the City, be pretty high up there too. But this is the most egregiously front end loaded one of my whole list. There you go.
Do they have any album that's like over like 35, 40 minutes? I don't think so.
Yeah. I guess they're pretty short, eh? Yeah.
Yeah.
We should give them heck one day in an episode for that. Yeah.
The great, really short albums, you know?
Yeah.
All right. Next on the list for me is Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Tarkus.
All right.
I mean, this is all about the title track, right? That's all of side A, the big epic Tarkus. Yeah. Fantastic. You can't say enough good things about that. And then you get to side 2. Jeremy Bender, could care less about that. I find that kind of silly. Bitches Crystal is really good. I do like that a bit. You know, then you got The Only Way, Infinite Space. Okay, right? Time and a Place. Okay. Are You Ready, Eddie? don't really care much about that. To me, this is kind of like a band that kind of blew their whole wad on the big title track, and the rest of it's just kind of like thrown together, a couple decent tracks, a couple kind of like throw-ins, whatever. And I think this is one of those albums, it has been for me for many years, where I rank this pretty high on in their discography based on that first side of this album. And that, I mean, how many times have we done that over our lives where you rank an album very highly based on the strength of just a handful of the tracks, even though we may not care about much of the rest of the album, it's those few tracks, or in this case, really two. I mean, I think for me, Bitches, Crystal, and Tarkus is the real highlight of this album. And then there's some other pretty good stuff on here, but nothing, you know, that's you're going to say is legendary ELP. So yeah, it's all about the title track on here. It's amazing. It's legendary for a reason. The rest of it,
yeah.
Maybe
yeah,
not.
so that's a little different than Close to the Edge, which you just got this great opening title track, but the whole side too is awesome too, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, when you think about it, you know, could you just imagine if like they went that route and just maybe Bitches, Crystal, and another like kind of mini epic on side two, and that's all you have. You know, you get rid of Are You Ready, Eddie and Jeremy Bender. All of a sudden, then this becomes possibly a great ELP album that could be their best ever, right?
Cool. All right. My second choice, or my number two is this album, Budgie, In for the Kill.
Oh, yeah.
You know, this is another one that's very much like the Nazareth album, in that it seems like there's one happy side and one like dark doomy side that kind of like depresses me. So side one, you've got In for the Kill, which again is one of their you know, good technical heavy metal rockers, one of the heaviest songs they ever did. Crash Course in Brain Surgery, same kind of thing, made famous by the cover by Metallica. This is the one on here that's actually produced a little bit different. It sounds different. It's got shakers in it and stuff, kind of a different bass sound. It's produced by Roger Bain, and the rest of the album's produced by Budgie. Wondering What Everyone Knows, you know, that's, even though it's kind of like a dirgy, quiet ballad, even just having those words in there means you can sing it in your head and you know what it goes like, so it's familiar. Zoom Club is one of their most famous songs of all time, even though it's kind of long and a bit meandering, but cool enough. So that's your whole side one. You get to side two, you get Hammer and Tongs, which is my favorite song on side two, but it is slow and doomy, and then Running from My Soul and Living on Your Own. So it just gets, this album just gets almost like progressively mellower and mellower, and you know, the songs kind of get longer. It's a lot of long songs. But yeah, so this was always very, very much like Hair of the Dog for me, and same sort of era as well. This is 74, the other one's 75. So yeah, there you go. Budgie, In for the Kill.
And that is a perfect example of what I just talked about before, about how like a handful of tracks can elevate an album. That is my favorite Budgie album, because it may not be the strongest start to finish than, you know, a couple of their other albums, but because of that title track and Zoom and, you know, one or two others, that I love those songs to death, and that has made that my favorite Budgie album.
Yeah.
All right. Metal Heart by Accept. I know this is probably going to upset a bunch of people. Again, I love this album. I really do. The first side, title track, Midnight Mover, Up to the Limit, Wrong is Right, Screaming for a Love Bite. I mean, great songs. Great songs. Then we move over onto side two, Too High to Get It Right. That's pretty good, kind of catchy. Dogs on Leads, I was never a big fan of that. Teach Us to Survive, kind of unmemorable for me. Living for Tonight, that's pretty good. And then Bound to Fail, again, kind of, to me, sounds like a lot of other Accept songs. I think this was the first album for me where Accept were starting to maybe rehash a little bit of what they've already done. But the majority of this album is quite strong. But that first half ranks up there with some of the best that Accept has ever done. I find the second side not quite up to par. It doesn't quite measure up to the greatness that side one is, but still a couple pretty good tracks on side two. But overall, I like this album quite a lot. I think this is a top, I'm trying to remember where I ranked this when I ranked this. This is a top 3 or 4 Accept album for me. Again, based on the strength of those handful of tracks that I mentioned.
Yeah, I think I went 3 on it as well. And hearing you read off the tracks, I mean, I think the 3 most famous songs on that album are all on side 1, right?
Yeah.
The hits or semi-hits, right?
Yep. Yep.
So yeah, cool. All right. Okay, so I have a bit of a story with this one. My last choice is AC/DC Highway to Hell. There you go. Final copy. So the funny thing about this one is, myself and my buddy Forrest Toop, we had this crazy rating system of songs. It was all based on heaviness, pretty much. We had lousy, so-sos, lousy goods, average goods, and really goods, right? And you worked out the math, and like I literally can think of probably 200 albums in my head, and I could tell you whether they were 7 out of 9s or 5s out of 7s or 4s out of 6s. You get the low numbers because so-sos canceled out. They didn't, if it had 10 songs, it still could be a 4 out of 6. Because so-sos, that means there's 4 so-sos on it, right? So yeah, weird. We had this system, and every album had a rating out of however many songs that we came up with for it. So with this record, I remember getting this and jumping on the phone with him, and I said to him, you know what, I'm going to tell you about side 2 first of all on this, because this really, I was like, raising the anticipation for how awesome the new AC/DC album was, right? So I remember getting on the phone with him and saying, side 2, you've got an average good in Shot Down in Flames. You've got a so-so in Get It Hot. You've got a lousy good in You Want Blood, You've Got It, which I love now. I love that song a lot. You've got a so-so in Love Hungry Man, and you've got a lousy in Night Prowler, because it was the mellow one, right? So I said, oh, there's your side 2. And he's like, oh, shit, the new AC/DC album is not very good. Wow, that's too bad, right? And I go, okay, Forrest, here's side 1. Get ready for this. You've got an average good in Highway to Hell. You've got a really good in Girls Got Rhythm, a really good in Walk All Over You, a really good in Touch Too Much, and a really good in Beating Around the Bush. Like, I just remember this to this day. It was an average good followed by 4 really goods, which was rare for AC/DC because they were never all that heavy. It was always a little too simple and old and boogie, that we loved the uniformity and how everything was pretty heavy, but they did not do a lot of quote unquote really goods. So this is a banging side 1, and still to this day, Walk All Over You and Touch Too Much are probably my 2 favorite AC/DC songs of all time. Beating Around the Bush is pretty high up there as well, being, fast, action-packed, cool song with a note dance riff. And Girls Got Rhythm, for some reason, whatever reason, that just the feel or the way that riff goes, we thought it was a pretty heavy sounding AC/DC song for some reason. And Highway to Hell is an average good, so we called that, it's pretty darn good, right? But you look at side 2, and there's nothing super heavy on side 2 on this album. But yeah, the intensity of Walk All Over You and Touch Too Much is just great. So there you go. That's my number 1 choice.
Yeah, it's a perfect choice.
Yeah.
Man, Touch Too Much. What a great song. Oh,
Yeah.
Love it. It's easily my favorite song on that album.
Yeah, cool.
So good. And it's one of the best AC/DC songs of all time, I think.
Yeah.
Great choice. All right. So some of you may recall in like the late 70s, maybe even to the early 80s, we had like all these like blockbuster albums where, you would have like 4, 5, 6 singles, all memorable songs, and these big, huge albums where, everybody knows every single song on the album. And then, as we moved into the 80s, you start to see these really big albums that had like, 1 or 2 blockbuster songs, and that really drove the sales of the album. And nobody really cared about the other songs on the album. And you always had to wonder why. Well, a perfect example of this is REO Speedwagon High Infidelity. So here is an album that, was immense, based on, for the most part, 1 song, but they did have 2 other songs that were, hit singles and all that sort of thing, and they played live and whatnot. So I remember like buying this album back in the day. Again, this was, real 81, right? I think something like that. And thinking, wow, side 1 really good, and then you get to side 2 and there's just not much going on. So you got Don't Let 'Em Go, which kicks off the album, really good hard rocker from the band. The big huge hit Keep On Loving You, right, which most of us probably never need to hear again. Follow My Heart, pretty good memorable rocker. Then you got kind of the silly In Your Letter. I was never a big fan of that. But then you got Take It on the Run and Tough Guys. And then all of a sudden you've got Out of Season, Shaking It Loose, which is kind of like the party boogie on the album, Someone Tonight, and I Wish You Were There. And that whole, the first side is fairly rocking, very memorable, very melodic, very kind of stadium ready. And then that second half just kind of, I listened to this like a week ago, and I'm like, man, is that second half of that just completely unmemorable. But yet, again, we've talked about it through this whole episode. You have these really big, memorable songs that the record label threw right off the bat on side A. That's where all the singles came from. That's probably when people went and bought this LP back in the day. They would play that first side, then probably put it back in its sleeve and toss it back in the pile, right? And could listen to that side over and over and over again. And I was guilty. I did the same thing back when I was a kid. I almost never listened to side 2, and revisiting again recently, now I understand why. But a huge album nonetheless, driven by a couple of really big songs, the big tours, and all that sort of thing. And millions and millions of copies later, there we go.
Yeah, he did rather well with that, that's for sure.
Yeah. So I have an honorable mention,
Okay.
which I wasn't going to put in, and I was like, I should talk about it. I went back and forth. So, and it actually works well in this conversation because this is a 90s album. So, we're kind of getting more recent times. So Martin and I have talked about a ton here on the channel about the CD era, where you had bands who, insisted on putting 13, 14, 15, 16 tracks on a CD, and 70 minutes long plus. And by the time you get like halfway through it, you got a little fatigue there, right? And it's just like, let's put as many songs as we can on this album, whether they're good, bad or ugly, right? Whatever. So my choice here is Youthanasia by Megadeth.
Okay.
A strong album. I like this album quite a bit. I mean, this is an upper echelon album, I think, but starts off with, you got Reckoning Day, Train of Consequences, right? Addicted to Chaos, A Tout Le Monde, Elysian Fields, The Killing Road, Blood Heroes, and then you've got the sort of, for me, kind of ordinary second half, Family Tree, title track, I Thought I Knew It All, Black Curtains, and Victory. And again, for some of you casual Megadeth fans, you're probably like, I never heard of any of those songs, right? There's a reason why, because they're not quite as good as what they threw on the beginning of the CD. So again, would it have made more sense in the CD age where, people's attention span kind of wavers? You're going to throw 70 plus minutes on here to mix this up a little bit, because this is really front loaded, like big time. And I'm not saying that the second half is necessarily bad songs. They just don't pack the punch. They're not as memorable as what you get in the beginning of it. So that is my honorable mention for today.
Cool. I didn't have any honorable mentions, but I'll mention a couple things. I tried to find some stuff from the CD age, because people always talk about, 14 songs, 15 songs. They made it too long. It only had one good song on it and stuff like that. And I checked a bunch of CDs, and I found that the hit wasn't always the first song on the album. I mean, often it was later on. So, but I will mention one honorable mention, because I thought for sure maybe you would bring it up, and so I didn't put it in my list because it was the first one that came to mind. Rush Moving Pictures fits this so well in terms of, for their biggest songs in a row to kick off the album. And then you get to the Dark Side, which are four, or hang on, 3 great songs. Is it 2, 3 great songs? 2, yeah, it's 3. But the hits, wow. I mean, Tom Sawyer and Red Barchetta and YYZ and Limelight are some of the biggest Rush songs of all time. Another one that kind of always struck me this way is Judas Priest Screaming for Vengeance with Electric Eye. And even the Hellion, actually, the Hellion, Electric Eye. You've got running from the wind, run in the, what is it? Running Bloodstone for sure, and running from the wind, running in the wind, whatever. Like those 3 are my favorite.
Actually, running
on the wind. So those are my 3 favorite songs on the album, and I do like the title track, and that's side 2. But everything else, the rest of side 2 is them being, I get heck for saying this all the time, but it's a little hair metal-y and a little accessible, right? But those 3, the 4 heaviest songs is one on side 2 to kick off side 2, but the other 3 are all, on side 1. So that one for me always struck me that way.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up some good points, and I almost picked Screaming for Vengeance. but I didn't because I love the title track so much. But there's a couple tracks on side 2 that I'm not crazy about. So I thought about that. I almost thought about Painkiller as well, because I think for me, Painkiller is fairly front loaded. I know there were a lot of people when we announced that we were going to be doing the show, people were like, oh, they have to pick Defenders of the Faith, right? But there are a couple tracks on, I mean, it's not quite as good. So any of those deep Judas Priest albums we could have picked. And I considered Moving Pictures, but I'll tell you why I didn't pick it. Because if we were to go back to, you know, the early 80s when that album first came out, absolutely I would have chosen it, because for me back in the day I listened to side A of that LP all the time, and I didn't always listen to side. I mean, I always loved Witch Hunt. Camera Eye was hit or miss with me, and I hated Vital Signs back in the day.
Right.
I will tell you now, when I listen to Moving Pictures, I generally don't listen to side A, the first half, and I listen to those last 3 tracks all the time. And I think I have grown a much greater appreciation for side 2 of that in, you know, more recent times, like the last 15, 20 years. And that's why I didn't choose it, because I'm like, where I'm at right now is I like side 2 a hell of a lot. And
me too. Probably even more than side 1, actually.
Right. Is that because of the overplayed syndrome? Right.
Yeah.
I guess. Right.
Yeah.
Maybe we've just wisened up and we realized those songs were always that good. We just chose to ignore them because they played the other ones live all the time and they played them on the radio. So, yeah, I mean, there's that there, you know, I'm sure if we dug deeper, like there's probably a ton, and Martin and I talked about before this, we went on the air, there's probably a ton of more recent albums where this is absolutely applicable, but we wanted to pick some stuff that's, you know, fairly well known. But I've heard many more modern recordings, you know, from maybe a little bit more obscure bands where, you know, they've got a 60, 70, 75-minute long album CD, and, you know, the first 5 tracks are great and the rest of it's kind of like ho hum, you know, but there's probably a ton of that. But anyway, these are some more well-known stuff. So I want to thank everybody for watching. Martin's coming right back because it'll be airing tomorrow actually, but we're going to be doing a favorite albums through the decades show for Heart. So stay tuned for that tomorrow morning. And then Martin and I'll be back once again next Friday. Martin, you want to talk about next Friday's topic that we're working on?
I forget what it is. We have 2 or 3 really good ones coming up, right? What was next Friday?
Hold on, I will get it in a second. Hang on, everybody. Let's see what we got here. Let me go to my schedule. Next week's topic is greatest song endings.
Oh yeah, wow, that's right.
Right. So and that's, I haven't even started with that yet. That's going to be a challenge. So those songs that have that crescendo at the end that just absolutely, you know, melt your face off, right? That's kind of what we're doing next Friday. And then probably even cooler, the Friday after that, to kind of finish out the month of May, our favorite band logos. I can't believe we have never talked about band logos on this channel in 7 years. So, and we were just kind of shooting the shit like a week ago, and Martin was talking about how he did something similar.
I did an alternate band logo. So for contrarians, we're trying to look at, you know, other things we can be contrarian about that aren't just our favorite album is a weird choice for it. So I came up with this thing. I'm going to talk about the band logos that were kind of used once or twice and then discarded, and I think they're better than their other band logos. So I came up with 5 examples of that. But yeah, it's, you know, it is odd you haven't done logos at all. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah. So, but we're going to do it. So that's 2 weeks from today. So stay tuned for that. And Martin, what's new on the book front? Anything you want to?
No, nothing really. It's pretty quiet. We're having a little bit of a lull. I'm waiting for that Uriah Heep to arrive, but and then I'm kind of in writing mode for the next 3-4 months. So there's a bunch of stuff I'm writing, but not much coming out.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Well, head over to martinpopoff.com for any of Martin's past books, and be on the lookout for that Uriah Heep, hopefully coming soon. Visit us here on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, of course, we're here on YouTube all the damn time. Coming up this weekend, we've got Ranking the Album show of Blind Guardian with Rich Catino and Nick Franco. We've got Andy Edwards coming on the show. Andy from the UK, of course, a member of Rain. He's been in Frost and all sorts of other European prog bands. He and I are going to be ranking our 10 favorite albums from the solo career of fusion-based legend Stanley Clarke, as well as ranking the albums of the Tony Williams lifetime. So it's kind of like a fusion weekend with Andy Edwards. So stay tuned for those and a lot more. Monday, the Hudson Valley Squares. Tuesday in the Prague seat. Wednesday is a new album review day, so look for a bunch of videos on new stuff, including Anthony Farrar and I are going to be in depth looking at the Jethro Tull
That's nice.
A la mode box set. So that's coming up, as well as a bunch of other things. I'm not going to spoil everything. I'll probably be talking a little bit about the new Thunder release, as well as what else we got going here. All Traps on Earth, another cool new little Scandinavian prog thing, and whatever else I can fill in. And then, of course, Thursday is the Monsters Den interview with guitarist Jeff Coleman. And in fact, I probably will also do a review of Jeff's brand new album right here, which is quite good. I've also got the brand new Sweet Isolation Boulevard, where they kind of redo a bunch of their hits, and yeah, all sorts of other stuff happening. And then, of course, Martin will be back. Before you know it, Martin will be back next Friday with me once again here at the Funhouse. So for Martin Popoff, I am Pete Pardo. Have a good weekend, everybody. Take care.